When I approached my mother's room, she was seated in a chair with a meaningful expression, silent. Suddenly, my mother said, "You can go back to New York now." What? Why all of a sudden? Don't you get it, Julia? You don't need to live here anymore. But, Mom, Dad's health isn't great, and my company has just started recovering. How many times do I have to say it? Just go without arguing. Your sister and her husband will take care of things. You're no longer needed. So go back to New York. I am Julia. I work in New York as an employee and am about to turn 32. I graduated from a local university but moved to New York for my job. For about 10 years after graduating university, I worked passionately and delivered solid results. I took promotion exams and kept climbing the corporate ladder. As a result, I earned a relatively high salary for my age. I never had a boyfriend before, and work was all I had, but that was okay for me. Despite being single and carefree, my friends often ask, "Don't your parents nag you about getting married?" They always try to push me into a romantic mindset, but it never works on me. The main reason I'm not interested in romance or marriage might be because of my mother. She never pressures me about romance, marriage, or grandchildren. I think she's simply not interested in me. My mother has always been more interested in my elder sister. My sister is tall and slim with long limbs and is quite a beauty in our hometown. She even worked as a model in a big city, proving her beauty was recognized even in the big city. Whenever my mother and sister walked together, they would receive compliments, so I guess my mother enjoyed that. She always paraded my sister around town as her pride and joy. On the other hand, I took after my father, lacking my sister's beauty and grace. I managed decent grades in school but never excelled beyond the top tier. So, I guess my mother wasn't that interested in me. My sister always got the latest trendy items, while I ended up with her hand-me-downs. When I wanted to discuss my future with my mother, she just said, "Decide for yourself. Do whatever you want." It might sound like she was being laissez-faire, but I felt more like she was neglecting me. As a result of being pampered, my sister grew up to be selfish and cunning. She portrayed herself as a kind sister in public, but she was awful to me. When we were young, she would say, "You're ugly, so don't stand next to me," and would often take my allowance, claiming, "You don't need it." I ended up despising her. After moving to New York, our encounters decreased, and I only had to see her a few days each new year. As I was reminiscing about these past events at home, I suddenly received a call from my mother. It was rare for her to call me unless something urgent happened. I answered the call in a panic, and she almost screamed, "Your father has collapsed." I informed my office, left early, and rushed back home. My father had a stroke, but although he survived, he needed to rest for a long while. When I arrived at the hospital room, my father was still asleep. Then my mother said, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" and led me to the hospital lounge. After taking a deep breath, she dropped a bombshell. "We have debts, about $200,000 US. What? Are you serious? Why do we have such a huge debt?" "Well, the business hasn't been doing well. My family runs a factory started by my grandfather, with my father taking over. They produce precise components. Growing up, I always saw my father working hard, sweating it out to provide for our family. Although it was a local public university with low tuition, they managed to send me there without relying on scholarships. I had never imagined they were in such dire financial straits. Upon hearing this, I felt something was amiss. After all, my mother handles the accounting for my father's company. She should have known about the debt earlier. Why did they let it grow this much? However, now isn't the time to harbor doubts. We need to find a way to repay the debt as soon as possible. As I re-entered the hospital room, lost in thought, I noticed my father had woken up. "Dad, do you recognize me? It's Julia." "Ah, Julia? How's the company? You came all this way to see me?" Yes. I left work early, so it's all right. Why did you push yourself to the point of collapsing? I'm sorry, Dad, about the debt. I just heard about it from Mom. I see. You found out. I'm truly sorry. I've been so weak as a father. Dad. What are you saying? I'll help too. Let's repay the debt and rebuild the business together. Julia, thank you. I didn't want to burden you. I'm sorry. I went back to my company briefly, explained the situation to my boss, and arranged to work remotely from my parents' home. In the following days, I took on tasks at my father's factory whenever time allowed. I not only pursued sales to clients, but also thoroughly assessed the work environment to identify improvements. Once my father recovered enough to move, he was discharged earlier than expected. He seemed concerned about overburdening me. The absence of my father, the company president, had indeed affected morale, but his swift return significantly boosted team spirit. Seeing the president pushing himself inspired and motivated the employees. Both my father and I repeatedly visited clients, pleading for better contract rates. Thankfully, a couple of companies admitted they had undervalued our services and agreed to raise the prices. Another issue that arose was regarding salaries. Without my knowledge, my older sister had been employed as a clerk in my father's company for several years. Shockingly, she demanded and received a monthly salary of $5,000, facilitated by my mother who had pressured my father. This not only impacted other employees, but also the company's finances. I chastised both my mother and manipulated father and reduced my sister's salary to an average level. The extra money she had been receiving was reallocated to raise the wages of other employees. This boosted their motivation and performance, setting everything on the right track. Combined efforts led to new contracts and the company started turning a profit. However, the most significant challenge was the massive debt. I moved to a private location with my father and handed him my bank book. What? Julia, how did you get this amount? I've been earning quite a lot and have been studying and strategically investing in stocks for a while now. I'll cover the $200,000 debt before interest accumulates. Please, Dad, manage the company without being swayed by Mom or sister. You can pay me back slowly. My father, with tears streaming down, he repeated, "Thank you, Julia. I'm truly sorry." About 4 months had passed since I returned home to help revive my father's business, and not everyone was pleased with the turnaround, especially my sister. Given that I, her younger sister, had efficiently managed both my job and the family business, and significantly improved its performance, she was clearly upset. Moreover, her salary had been drastically reduced. "You always meddle too much. You should have just stayed in my shadow and kept quiet." As always, she felt the need to be superior and couldn't stand not being the center of attention. "I'm exhausted. I'm back. Tyler, welcome home. You must be tired." My sister greets her husband Tyler in a playful, cutesy tone as he returns home. My sister has an uncanny ability to change her demeanor and expressions in a flash, depending on the person she's talking to. This skill has become her forte. I feel she would excel in sales or customer service roles that would leverage this talent. Tyler, my sister's husband, is what you'd call handsome. He has a kind nature and is very approachable. He works as a public servant and has a stable income. I presume my sister, who is known for her beauty, approached him, and he fell for her charms. Lost in such thoughts, I was summoned by our mother. Heading to her room, I found her sitting on a chair, emanating an air of significance. Suddenly, she said, "You can go back to New York now." "Huh? Why? You see, Julia, you don't need to live here anymore." "But Mom, Dad isn't feeling well, and the company has just started recovering." "Must I repeat myself? Don't make excuses. Just leave. Since your sister and her husband will take care of things, we don't need you anymore." So, pack your things and go back to New York. I couldn't comprehend or believe what my mother just said. After all the time and effort I had invested to help them, she changed her attitude as soon as the debts were cleared. This turnaround was just too quick. Maybe I was the one who was wrong. Maybe I was overjoyed by the rare instance of being relied upon by my mother, feeling that I had finally gained her acknowledgement. It seems I was just a pawn for her from the beginning. Fine, I understand. I'll go back to New York. As I was packing, I overheard my mother and Julia giggling, saying things like, "Finally, that thing is leaving." With a myriad of emotions, I went back to New York. Soon after, I received a call from my father. "Julia, what happened? Why are all your things gone from the house?" "I'm sorry, Dad. I couldn't bear Mom and Ashley anymore. I left without saying anything, and I'm really sorry, especially since it's not your fault. I was worried when I couldn't find your belongings. I couldn't just sit still. I rushed to New York. I just arrived. Can we meet for a bit?" "What? You're in New York?" I hadn't expected my father to come to New York. I sent him my address. I realized this was his first time visiting New York. Is every apartment in New York City Center this luxurious? This is amazing. Everything shines. Not really. I think this is one of the pricier apartments in New York. The company was able to recover thanks to you, and yet I'm sorry how things turned out, Julia. It's okay. It's not your fault. I've given up on Mom's attitude ever changing. I've caused you so much trouble. That's why I want those two to experience at least a fraction of the hardships you went through." "How?" "Remember when you lent me $200,000 and we made a promissory note? You know that if I die, that note will become a liability, right?" "Don't say die, Dad. It scares me. The thing is, I've been diagnosed with cancer." "No way. You're joking, right? Please don't lie about something like that." "I wish it was. When you were helping manage the business, I felt something was off and went for a checkup. That's when they found out. It's advanced, and I don't have much time left." "No. I can't believe this. I'm truly sorry. I don't want to be a burden to you any longer. Please sign this paper. When I pass, it will turn into a debt. I want you to renounce the inheritance." With serious eyes, my father looked straight at me. I decided to accept my father's request, signing away my inheritance. "Julia, always remember that I cherish you more than anything in the world." While his words made me all tingly inside, they lifted a weight off my heart, and I was genuinely happy. A week later, my father passed away. Thinking it was the only opportunity, he must have pushed himself to come all the way to New York. After finalizing the funeral arrangements, I told my mother and sister, "I'll take care of all the memorial services for Dad." Probably not wanting to in the first place, they happily agreed with me. I can't even imagine going through such a hassle, especially when it costs money. Honestly, I can't understand why you think like that, Julia. I just can't relate. Listen, I want to cut ties with both of you. That's why I'm taking Dad with me. Oh, please. Acting all high and mighty? Actually, I'd be thrilled if you cut ties from your end. Exactly. We're better off without you. Oh, really? Well, good luck, just the two of you. From now on, don't come asking for my help. And Tyler, be careful. My mother and sister might exploit you soon. Wait, what do you mean, Julia? Julia, are you jealous? Don't feed Tyler such baseless stories. All right then. I doubt we'll see each other ever again. Take care. With that, I swiftly left my family home. It wasn't long before, as expected, the phone started ringing incessantly. The calls were from my mother and sister. Annoyed and bothered, I answered the call out of pity. What? What the hell? Why is there a $200,000 debt as Dad's inheritance? Wasn't the debt paid off? Oh, that? I loaned Dad $200,000. What? You did? Yep. Is there a problem? By the way, make sure you pay back the 200,000 US dollars. If you try to default on it, I'll deal with it through a lawyer. Since the company Dad left behind is doing well, you should be fine, unless you've been tampering with your own salaries. It might cause distrust among the employees, so watch out. Wait. How on earth did you get 200,000 US dollars? Why do you ask? Unlike you, I've always worked hard. That's why I earn a good salary, and I invest in stocks. Plus, I live in a luxury apartment in New York. What? Why do you have a higher status than me? That's impossible. Oh well. Good luck with repaying the debt and handling the company with Mom. After ending the call, I immediately blocked their number. I heard from a former employee I met during my time helping at the factory that, as expected, my mother and sister had reverted the employee salaries and were greedily lining their own pockets. As a result, the core staff submitted their resignations, and the company is now on the verge of bankruptcy again. Also, Tyler grew tired of my sister's antics and has decided to leave her. If the company goes bankrupt, the debt will surpass the current 200,000 US dollars. It's just deserts for their reckless extravagance. It's none of my business now. They can do as they please. On the other hand, I've met a wonderful man, a lawyer, who not only has a high income but is also an excellent cook and has a gentle character. He recently proposed, and we're getting married. I want to build a happy family with him, filled with endless smiles.